right, we've been exploring what is actually the essence, not of only of logotherapy, but of life itself, which Frankl called responsibility. Responsibility is the essence of human existence. And, we explored it right from the word go as a call that's embedded in us, an intuitive knowing that we have to reach out. And not just that we have to reach out, we've got a need to reach out, a desire to reach out. Like we saw that when we are born, our consciousness is directionally intended. It seeks an object. And we've seen that meaning, in fact, is when we meet, when there is connection, when we enter into a relationship. And we've explored with the sacred boundaries of logotherapy that those boundaries protect the unscathed human spirit. So evident in a newborn baby, where there is just such an open expectation to be met. There is an intuitive search for a connection with a significant other. But that other needs to respond to the infant with the yes of love. We've looked at love as the ability to see someone in their very singularity, in their uniqueness. And, it's like a mother that we looked at that really looked forward to and wanted a baby. And the joy of receiving that child, of holding it in her arms for the first time. The yes of love that pours out of her gives the infant an immediate boost to what is inherently part of ourselves, the will to meaning. And meaning, as I said, is to connect, is to feel, yes, there is someone on the other side. Frankl called it the unconscious God, that comes to me and that I want to reach out and connect to. And it's in this evolving relationship that human development truly takes place. If it is boundaries of love, then that unscathed human spirit is retained.
Teria, I'm so sorry. Can you unmute, please? So,
have I been speaking into the air?
No, just for the last few seconds.
Oh, for the last few seconds. I was saying that the sacred boundaries of responsibility is to how to protect this growing response to the outside world, that growing desire to be involved in it and to explore it and to find its meaning, and eventually to play a unique and singular role in it as an answer to the call that we cannot deny comes to every one of us. This is in fact what makes us human. We're talking now about the last phase, which is responsibility as the freedom that truly liberates. What do we mean by that? When Frankl said, inherently, we are all free. We cannot escape our freedom. We know that we have to interpret and do something about with that which we are confronted with. And we intuitively know that we want it to be a life-giving connection. And like a child spontaneously reaches out to that love, which is, recognizes it, hears it, sees it, gives it a name, calls it forth, that is life enhancing. And a fundamental withdrawal from and a protection against what is harmful, what is loveless, what is neglectful, what is hurtful, and that the infant intuitively withdraws from. And as it grows older, you realize that those are the things in life that you do not want. And in fact, because we are in a world that is everything but perfect. We are born in a very, very broken, turbulent world full of conflict, violence, war, lawlessness. But, and as I said, we're actually at an age in the story of humanity where the light of enlightenment as to what we really want and what we are created to be have overcome such a tremendous amount of horror in history. And that we are at a stage where there is almost, you can say, a world consciousness of responsibility, even if it is expressed in human rights, in the World Court, and even the United Nations. That nations should not learn to make war with nation anymore, and that was the motto of the United Nations. Even though there's a great deal of distortion still there, still a great struggling to see what it ultimately means. And ultimately it means that good must become so powerful in its accumulation that it totally contradicts evil, to the point that what is evil in the world, what, tyrannical regimes and terrorist movements that are out to kill and to murder, and that actually is driven by hatred and a will to dominate and to suppress and oppress, that becomes so ugly that it's cornered. It's cornered. The darkness, as the light rises, the darkness has to recede. And it's this beautiful story that is actually fundamental to all of us. We ended last week with Pan's story. And, there we were faced with the fact what Frankl said, that we cannot escape pain, guilt, or death. But suffering makes us aware of what ought not to be. And Pan's struggle to come out of what her sexual abuse was transmitting to her, saying that she's useless, that she's a nothing and a nobody, that defiant power of the unscathed human spirit rose up in her in protest and went beyond what she was made to believe about herself, eventually coming to what I said, psychopathology, mental illness, and deviation from the norm. It's all a question of believing the lie, because the truth of it is that we are here to overcome, and that we've been given the ability to do so. And it's like a story. Every story has a beginning, but it works towards an ending, towards a climax, as it unfolds the plot of overcoming and coming to that triumphant ending. And I thought, I would illustrate what is now really that stage in our lives that Pan has reached, where that past is no longer a past that holds her back, or that encapsulates or imprisons her. It's a past that has been overcome. And what she is now transmitting into the past is those overcoming moments. I am here. I am somebody. I have worth. My life is meaningful. It has a purpose. And the very purpose is that what I've learned in my suffering, as to what I do not want, I can transmit to others in terms of helping them to overcome what they're struggling against. And as we said, we are meeting our clients. They come to us because they've got the same protest that, this pathology, this conflict, this feeling of emotional imprisonment, this can't be, this is not it. There must be something more. That's why they come and see us. They are looking for healing. And as I said, what makes logotherapy so profound is that the greatest healing is through meaning. It's not coping. It's not a shift in perception. It's not learning how to influence people in a good way, or how to show assertiveness, or emotional intelligence and all of that. It's far more than that. Why? Because it goes to the very depths of our being. Like I said, we have to explore the depths of logotherapy in order to reach its heights. That at the beginning of the story, there was the intent as to how the end must be achieved. It's a wonderful story. And once we've come to the point that is almost like Frankl said, an emotional turnabout, an existential umstellung, he puts it, where we're stepping out of our doubts, our worries, our pains, our despairs, and we look at it and we say, what have I got to do with this any longer? I am now, like Rain said about herself, drawing the boundaries, the sacred boundaries around my unscathed, pure spirit that has been given to me as an enablement to become what I've been created to be, and reach a level of human greatness. Those boundaries will say no to that which tries to intrude and infiltrate and take over. A clear no makes the yes to life that much more committed, and it's a conviction. It's like I said last time, it's where you reach the point of saying, listen, I am. Here I am. Send me. So when we reach this level of, the Bible calls it making our calling and election sure, when we begin to venture out into life with a sense of mission, that's the most glorious place to be. And it's an incredible thing that we are enveloped, and that we looked at last week, by a transcendence that is far greater than we are. We are intentionally directed. Mental health is the tension between what is and what ought to be. We have a future orientation. We know that the future beckons and we want to meet it, but we cannot predict that future. We cannot plan it. We cannot manipulate into being. All of such plans fall by the wayside because we learn that what the momentum of our lives we are taken up in a far greater process than we can comprehend. I just, was thinking of one wonderful story of Helen Martins, a South African sculptress that had a most disastrous childhood. She was the youngest of 10 siblings, 4 of whom had died. Her own birth caused the death of her mother. And she was called after one of the dead siblings. In other words, from the moment of her life, she was declared dead. And she suffered such rejection from her father, who blamed her for her mother's death, that she saw it as a great darkness enveloping her. But, so incredible. One thing that fascinated her as a child was light. And, and she couldn't wait until she was old enough to light her own candle. And, it was that candle, the will to meaning of her unscathed spirit reaching out for beyond this darkness into becoming who she was meant to be, that eventually had the climax when her father died. And she began to sculpt. And it was so incredible. She was the first outsider artist in the world. That she used scraps of throwaway things, pieces of wire, broken glass, cement, to make the most beautiful sculptures. Out of this broken life, she created such beauty that her home in New Bethesda became, upon her death, a historical monument, visited by thousands of people over the years, just reveling in her story, and to see this garden filled with statues all facing east, which he said, and Ethel Fugard, the playwright in South Africa, made a film called The Road to Mecca. She said, that's to Mecca, to some exotic future place that she said when she was about to die. And she said, I'm only halfway on my road to dreams. And this is that, we are part of a bigger story. We don't complete, the whole story. We're part of that story, and it's a magnificent story that, and this is so fundamental to who we are, because we recognize from the word go that we cannot do it alone. Love cannot be felt in isolation, as I said. You need someone to love, and you need the experience of others that love you. That is life. It's that kind of harmony of togetherness that is without the ugliness of conflict and rejection and pain and hurt. A togetherness in what Frankel said we need, and especially now in our age, that those of us who join the race of the decent, join forces and become a powerful good in this world that outstrips the effort of evil, that actually shows up evil for what it is. Like Frankel said, what ought not to be. Wow, we are preparing for entering a future of reward and of achievement that is beyond our comprehension. It is so great. Like Helen Martin said at the end of her life, when she had formed a loving relationship with Elsa, somebody like my husband and I that came across her home, and it was so astounded at what we were seeing, so moved by it, that she formed a relationship with Elsa that was so deep and so wonderful that in the end, when she could say in the presence of a pastor that really was trying to mold her into pattern and to bring her under the conformity of the Calvinistic belief system of that little village. And she could not confine herself to that. And when she said in his presence, I have overcome darkness. And her house is a cascade of light. She loved, there are hundreds of lamps and candles and bright images. It's all her walls are with brightly colored glass that reflect the light. It's incredible. But when Elsa asked her and said, Helen, are you afraid of dying? Because she was getting arthritis and her eyesight was failing. And she said, if I can't work anymore, I'll die, and immediately. And in fact, she committed suicide. She couldn't stand the fact that she wouldn't be able to go on sculpting. It was too much. And I challenged students who I used to show this film to, even suicide can have meaning, okay? We must move away from judgmentalism. But when Elsa asked her, Helen, are you afraid of dying? She answered, my darling, dying isn't the problem. Living is. I couldn't live dying. And now I want to tell you another story of another film that I encourage you to try and Google and find and to look at. It's a Norwegian film with English subtitles. It's called As It Is in Heaven. I saw it in Johannesburg many years ago. A friend took me. And when I went to watch it a third time, this friend bought me the video because it was logotherapy start to finish. And I just want to tell you the story because, sometimes, especially last week, when we spoke of the transformational power of objective meanings, it's a bit difficult to comprehend. Like I said, logotherapists themselves, have difficulty in comprehending the fact that, well, what is meaning? And Frankl was very, very clear on the fact that we have what he called the unconscious God, and an intuitive relation to the divine. And it's actually the divine that envelops us with love, and whose commands, his voice, his will, are actually what we would describe universal values, like love, like respect, like, think of anything positive. Those are universal values. Love is the greatest of them. And, you can't conjure up love. You can't make it happen. It happens to you as you connect. Oh my. So, that's the transformational value. When we respond to the voice of the divine that Frankl says filters through to our consciousness, which is actually conscience and awareness of being called, and an awareness of having to answer and respond. And that every situation places us almost before a question that we are called upon to answer. And with a right answer, with a life-giving answer, with a yes, not a no or a maybe, but a yes. Wow. And every time we respond in that way, we grow. That's what Frankl says, the meaning of the moment. If you fulfill that meaning, do what a situation requires of you, that you sense it is what it is you must do, what you must do. Like I said, the word is near you, in your mouth. You understand it so that you may do it. You know, intuitively you know. I mean, I can recall every wrong thing I did in my life and that I knew at the moment of doing it that it was wrong. Can't escape conscience. And if you give heed to that, Frankl said, that moment is eternalized. Wow, you gain stature. Like we saw last week, you develop and grow spiritually to the point of what Erickson described, ego integrity, where you transmit out of a sense of, this is me, and this is what I want to give to the world. This is what I understand I have to give to the world. This is my particular gift that I've gained through my suffering experiences, like Fan did, that she can minister to people with sexual abuse that no one who hasn't experienced can do it that effectively, because she knows what it is like. And that's how, we get through to our clients, that we can really say, I know what it is like. That's that deep kind of empathy that makes a connection, that says, I understand, I grasp, I see your struggle. And I can also see why you're having that struggle, that it's forming you, and encouraging with your loving attitude to provoke and to enliven this world to meaning in your client, that that you put them on the path leading into their futures, their particular callings in life. Now, coming back to this film, it's a most fantastic film. It first of all illustrates the unscathed human spirit. It starts with this little boy that had a gift for music. And as he put it, that since when he was, older, he told us, he said, ever since I was a little boy, I wanted to make music that would open people's hearts, open their hearts, that we can connect to each other. But, so it starts with him playing the violin in this beautiful outdoor scene. But then approached by the three bullies of the village in which he lived, and assaulting him and giving him such a thrashing that his mother, who was a widow, decided to move and to send him to a different school, because he was shattered by this violent assault of envy, actually envy, of this boy's talent and of being unusual and of standing out. And those who have abrogated the meaning of their lives or trampled it underfoot, even as children, that have been indoctrinated to hate, or have actually, I'm so fascinated by Frankl saying even the mentally ill can make a decision between what is good and bad. Like a paranoid schizophrenic can go out and murder his persecutors. Another one can forgive them or suffer them, but not kill them. But anyway, that this was such an assault on his tender little spirit that his mother took him away. But the rest of his life, it's like I say, we born into a world with so much wrong, with so much violence, with so much hatred, and it scares us, it wounds us, and we have to struggle against it. And especially the struggle is also internal, and not to be provoked into a counter-aggression, what Frankl called the subhuman aspects of our being, where the animalistic urges of self-survival and function so powerfully that we don't lash out in self-defense, but learn to struggle with, even with our own tendencies, because we know that what is being done to us is wrong. So why should we then also do it? Like the famous saying of the Jewish sage, that was also repeated in the New Testament, although in a different way: you shall love your neighbor as yourself, and do unto others that you would want them to do to you. He put it, do not do to others what you would not want them to do to you. So it's this kind of overcoming into a clear conviction of what is really good and beautiful and true, that you can begin to take that stand of, it's a very confident, almost a self-committed stand, one of deep conviction that becomes very powerful and strong. That you can really look evil in the face. Like I found with my Holocaust survivors whom I interviewed, that really, like, remember that one of Dinar, who was brought before the Gestapo, and he said, don't you know I've got the power over life and death? Why don't you bend down and kiss my boots and beg for your life? That's what evil does. It dominates. It wants to silence our voice. It wants to actually remove us from the scene. Because why? We've got such a powerful influence to defeat it. And she stood up very upright and she said, yeah, whether I live or die is your decision, but that I don't bend down and kiss your boots and beg for my life, that's my decision. Wow, she was only 14 years old when she said this, and it frightened him no end. He let her go instead of killing her, sent her back to the ghetto. My word, the defiant power of the human spirit once it is operative. So to come back to this poem, there was this strain. It was the main character, the violinist. He became a great composer, conductor and composer. Daniel, his name was called, strained so much, because we strain and we struggle and we want to break through. I mean that he actually had bloody noses as he conducted the orchestra, and in fact he's overstraining his heart. He had a heart attack. And sometimes it's just that life brings us into a crisis corner and saying, why are you struggling so hard? Surrender. I'm here. Like that woman that said to the almond tree, that the almond tree spoke to her and said, I'm here, I'm here, I'm life, everlasting life. You don't have to try and hold so tightly onto life. You have it. You have it. And that Frankel said, even those, the ones that did not, so the best of them did not survive, but they could go into the gas chambers with a prayer of triumph on their lips. Oh my God. So, he then had to cancel all these appointments. That was he was fully booked 8 years ahead. He was so famous. And he said for the first time in his life, his diary was completely blank. That's a point to start. This is enough. Now I'm starting a new life, a new page. I'm no longer the victim. I am now looking for myself in a victorious way. That's what happened to him. He went back to his childhood village. Nobody recognized him because his name was changed. But what happened there was that the pastor came to visit him and gave him a Bible, and very expecting him to come and submit and flow into this kind of religiosity that is conformity, but not creativity. And like I said last week, we can't bring God down and make a religion of him. He is. And he's above every religion. And every religion, like Frankel said, is but one language trying to come to the one truth. But no language can say another language is wrong or hold itself out as the final answer, please. So he had declined the offer to, to get involved. He said, I've come to listen. And as he, went into the shop to buy groceries because he bought the old schoolhouse to live in, he was met with Lena, and it was such a magnificent story because it was near Christmas and she was dressed like an angel, and her whole appearance and demeanor was angelic, wonderful. And the way she's open-hearted, sensitive, and he was touched by her, and she gave him, because he was known in the village, and this great composer had come to live there, and this great conductor, a tape that she had made of her own singing. And he took the tape, and then, there was Christmas festivities, and he went to have a look, and he was met by her where she was dressed as an angel. And she asked him, did you listen to it? And he said, not yet. But then he saw this boy who attacked him. Connie was his name. He heard screams, and he saw him beating his wife called Gabriella. Fisting her and throwing her to the ground. And he saw this through this open doorway. And he went in and he said, stop. And the man just shoved him aside and took a gun and almost shot at him in his rage. And he went back and realized this was Connie. This was the boy that was instrumental in his beating up those many years ago. And immediately he took recourse to the opposite of this evil and played Lena's tape. And it was such a beautiful song. Come, fly away with me. Let's reach to the sky and fly away. And, he was so touched by that. But what happened was, and this is what life does, it comes with invitations. He was confronted by a man that he bought a bicycle from, a bicycle shop owner, who showed him this little choir of the church and said, wouldn't he just come to listen? He said, no, I'm not performing anymore. He said, come on, just listen. So, he did, in fact, one evening walk past the little church wall and heard them singing and went in to listen. And he was drawn. There was potential there. There was an outreach there, a kind of looking for music, not quite getting there, but it made him decide to offer himself as the kind of cantor, the choir master of this little church community. And the pastor was, okay, wow. They're so below your standard. What can you do with it? But then the most incredible story started, because he was beginning to tell them. He said, listen, it starts with listening. He had them sit down and listen to him. It starts with listening. The music is there. That objective meaning is there. But we must bring it down. And each one of you have got an individual tone that you must find. And we must learn to harmonize, which is in fact what eventually happened, to an incredible extent that each one of them is a sort of kind of under this oppressive yoke of this religious community, broke through into this kind of freedom of response that we're talking about as a theme of today. And especially Gabriella, she had a beautiful voice. So beautiful that, they were planning a concert in the village, that he wrote a song just for her. And she was so shocked when he asked her to sing it. She was so frightened to step forward and to let her voice be heard because it's been so squashed by her violent husband. But there was a kind of a crisis scene which just made her aware that she spoke to Daniel also in private, and he shared with her his desire to open people's hearts with music, and that she has this beautiful, beautiful, singular tone that's just hers, her voice, and how much it's needed as a kind of almost prime voice of this chorus that was reaching out to heaven to bring it down as they experience this music and to transmit it to the village in such life-enhancing ways. So her song was something incredible. I wrote it down. Listen to this, what she said, what he wrote, the words that he wrote for her song. It is now that I realize my life is mine. I've got such a short time on earth, and my longing has brought me here. My trust to find it was far beyond words, and I've been shown a little bit of the heaven I've never found. And then she, goes on to say, I want to feel that I'm alive all of my living days. I will live as I desire, knowing that I was good enough. I've never lost who I was. I've only left it sleeping. Maybe I never had a choice. She was so rendered choiceless. Just the will to stay alive. All I want is to be happy with who I am, to be strong and to be free, to see day arise from night. I'm here and my life is only mine, and the heaven I thought was there, I'll discover it somewhere here with me. I want to feel that I've lived my life. And the end of the story is, in fact, where this little chorus went to Vienna, where there was choruses from all over the world, with the title "Let My People Sing." And Daniel was out cycling and didn't see that the time was passing, and then saw how late it was and rushed back. But in his rushing back and climbing the stairs to where they were on the platform about to perform, he had a heart attack. But before he died, because they were waiting for him to come, and he had shared this with Lena, he said that there was one moment in his life. He was only 19 years old when he was conducting this orchestra, and there was a power failure, and in the dark they couldn't see him, they couldn't see each other, but each of them found their own tone and harmonized. Their minds came together, and this is what happened there when he didn't pitch up to conduct them, and they began each just voicing their own tone. And as they did, it's like one voice after the other in the audience began to also just tone their own tone, just sing their own tone. And in the end, the entire audience stood up and sang, and he heard this before he died. So what a story of bringing heaven down to earth. And I just want to end it. There's only 10 minutes left, no time for actually discussion. But I want to actually illustrate it with two examples of our students. And the one is Grant. I don't know if you're here tonight. Grant is our blind student who had an accident and was blinded. But falling into darkness, it's so incredible because, you know, we are often so blinded by the appearance of things. And we go according to appearances. And like I said, you know, we need to get beyond those presenting problem, the appearance of things, and go to what is actually at the root of the problem. Where did the will to meaning in this client's life, or in what Grant discovered, you know, it was his crisis. What was his life about? And, you know, where he discovered his own fundamental urge to reach to an enlightened understanding of the purpose of his life. And, you know, he's been incredible the way he's been working with other blind people, and how he has been able to transmit through the wonderful technology that is available, that, you know, that an email can be made to be like a voice, and he can, and of course, speak through the internet. And he sent me not so a few days ago just a picture of a tree that has deep roots, and the caption underneath it is, "A tree that wants to touch the sky must extend its roots into the earth." And I found this so incredible as an understanding of a student that Pan and I had, an Iranian student, who actually illustrates something that's very important for us to know. I tried to highlight it last time too, that it's not a question, and I will make a separate video yet of logotherapy and religion. But it's like Frankel said, religion, if it's really a true faith, is something that is profoundly personalized, you know. And it's actually this personal understanding of what life is calling you to be. And if you act on it, and, you know, you come to that point of servitude that you want to give out to people, you want to do your share in changing the world for the better, to let good overcome evil, then, you know, it's that is what matters. Whether you believe with your understanding that there is a God or not. That's why I said logotherapy was so profound, because we can speak to the whosoever. Meaning is there for the whosoever. It doesn't matter what religion you belong to, or whether you don't belong to any religion at all. Even if you're an atheist, it's all there for anybody who would seek to find it. And if they seek to find it, they'll find it. Life challenges us to find it all the time. Our destiny actually pursues us. It corners us. We have, you know, until we can give the answer and say yes to it and do what we've been created to do. And this student, he wrote this about the situation in Iran, a tyrannical, evil regime of oppression that, for one thing, want to create a nuclear bomb. The first thing they'll do is to obliterate Israel. Okay, never mind all the Arabs that they'll kill in the process as well. But then also, they call America the big Satan because it is supporting the small Satan, which is Israel. And the whole urge to, and the world trying to placate, like a Hitler, trying to placate. You can't placate evil. You've got to stand up against it. I don't know what this nuclear deal is going to be like. But point is, he described what the situation was like there. And, he couldn't, he came across logotherapy on the internet. But when he heard I lived in Israel, he said, if they knew that I had contact with somebody in Israel, I'll be jailed. So, we had to do it via the South African Institute via PAN and not let on that I lived in Israel. So he said that the economy is in a state of total collapse. People are struggling to live. And he wrote this about it. He said, humans are inherently curious and want to discover the truth. But in a culture, this fact-finding may be taboo, and people may be barred from doing so. Therefore, as human beings, we cannot flourish in this kind of culture. Any free doubt and thought will lead us to feel guilty, condemned. Conversely, however, ignoring the truth creates the same feeling of guilt. And he spoke about something that Rain's client brought out so beautifully when she said, I feel I've failed myself. He said he experiences this kind of guilt if he doesn't go against the system in terms of using his own mind, his own search for meaning, and taking his own place in the world, and not be subjected to what he is being told to be, which is to hate and to be part of a system that destroys. He said the very opposite is what he was desiring. He said, if I don't act, my guilt is a feeling of sadness. Isn't that wonderful? Remember what Rain's client said when she said, talked about the sadness that she's failed herself when she looked back on her life of looking for love in all the wrong places. I failed myself. But she said, no more. And she discovered that there was something sacred and intact in her that she wanted to have come out into the open in an honest, transparent, decent way of living, that it can grow and prosper, that she can become all that she was created to be and has the ability to be. And through her suffering, I think if anybody, she became a prostitute, as we do. Will she be able to minister to prostitutes? They're so desperate that they take to the streets, my word, or to combat sex slaves and this sort of a thing. This is her peculiar mission that's been formed through her experiences. Anyway, this is what he said, and I want to end with what he said, that, at first, hearing about Frankel's view on the transcendent and unconscious God, he went into a kind of a mini collapse, and he poured out his agony to us, because that was the area because the cry of Allah Akbar, in the name of Allah Akbar, they kill, what kind of a God do they represent? A punitive God that actually asks for sacrifice and child sacrifice, that you bring up your children to be suicide bombers, really, or use your population as human shields. Wow. So, he felt so threatened by even the mention of God. But Pan and I were able to carry him through this stage, and that we helped him to see that it wasn't a question of, do you believe? If you don't believe, you're an infidel, you could be beheaded or something. That, wait a moment. This presence is everywhere. It's not confined to a religion. And the meaning is there for you to find. And, Ben and I never spoke about God again, but we spoke about the meaning of his life, the beauty of his spirit searching for the meaning in his life, and where he found it with his family. He's got a doctorate in psychology. And he, he is looking for ways to get out of the country, but nonetheless, he ended with this incredible saying. He said, I have found the ultimate meaning of life in life itself. Wow. I don't have to formulate it as a religion. If I live these values, that emanate from, I don't even know where they emanate from, but they are life-giving. They call to me. They transform me. I respond to them. And as I respond to them, something happens. I grow. I'm enthusiastic about a future that is calling me. I'm moving forward. I'm not being held under the thumb anymore. So this is what's happened to him. And so, isn't it wonderful that as logotherapists, we don't have to preach. We don't have to persuade anybody, because it's all in them. You just have to elicit it. And this is, what love actually does. Love doesn't ask you to fulfill requirements before, you are acceptable. You are loved for who you are, faults and all. Because the love sees your potential, and it understands your struggle, and it calls you forth, and it believes in you and will never give up on you. Well, that's the nature of ultimate meaning that we can discover on this wonderful stage when we begin to give expression to who we really are. So what we're doing, we're actually helping our clients to become who they've been created to be, each in their uniquely singular place. No, like Frankel said, you can't generalize the meaning of life. Life is concrete in the here and now, and as it speaks to each person in a unique and personal conversation that cannot be repeated. I can't, like Frankel said, you can't have one session with a client and have exactly the same with the next, because you'll be neglecting one or even both of them. Each conversation that life has is a personal conversation, and it's irrepeatable. Your life is irreplaceably yours. Okay? There we go.